Hello, brothers and sisters. How's it going? Hope you're having a splendid day or evening, depending on where you're at. So, my grace is sufficient for you. The topic of today's video. I know most of us followers of Christ have pondered over this verse, the 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9, infamous, my grace is sufficient for you, for your weakness, for your strength is made, for my strength is made perfect in your weakness. I know most of us followers of Christ have pondered over this verse at least once during our walk with God, myself included. And I always thought that I knew what it meant. But 2 or 3 days ago, I like to think I had a divine revelation of what this actually means. I was lying in bed, and all of a sudden, I was thinking about this verse, and I had this like a epiphany, like an aha moment, like something clicked in my mind, and I finally put two and two together on what this meant. A post here from a brother or sister, a video title there from another brother and sister, and finally my subconscious put two and two together, and I like to think it was a divine revelation from God. Like I had a quantum leap of uh, understanding, an understanding upgrade about what this verse means. So, and I would like to share it with you, brothers and sisters, this revelation I had. So, without further ado, let's get right into it, shall we? First, I'll give you the verse and the previous verses that came before this verse to provide context. So, in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 2 to 9, Apostle Paul says, I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven. Whether in the body or out of the body, I do not know. God knows. And I know that this man was caught up into paradise. Whether in the body or out of the body, I do not know. God knows. And he heard things that cannot be told, which man may not utter. On behalf of this man I will boast, but on my own behalf I will not boast, except of my weaknesses. Though if I should wish to boast, I would not be a fool, for I would be speaking the truth. But I refrain from it, so that no one may think more of me than he sees in me or hears from me. So to keep me from becoming conceited because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from becoming conceited. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. So there you have it, brothers and sisters. There's a lot to unpack there. These verses, this cluster of verses are fully loaded, my friends. Let me first explain the first part of the verse, where Paul says, I know a man of Christ 14 years ago that ascended to the third heaven. Basically, he was talking about himself. So since he was talking about himself, why was he referring to himself in the third person? So he did this on purpose to not appear boastful, in order to humble himself, you know. And in the next part of the verse, he said it himself. But on my own behalf, I will not boast except of my weaknesses. Though if I should wish to boast, I would not be a fool, for I would be speaking the truth. In other words, if he wanted to boast, if he actually gave the full version of events of what happened to him, and no one would bat an eyelash, at least not the believers. I mean, the unbelievers, they don't believe it anyway. So moving on to the next part of this cluster of verses, the thorn in his side. He asked God to take away this thorn in his side 3 times. He pleaded with God. a messenger of Satan was harassing him. There's a lot of speculation about what he was talking about in this verse. A lot of believers think he was talking about a disease that was afflicting him. Others believe that it was a repetitive sin or a cycle or addiction. Some even think it was a physical person harassing him. And I myself believe this, that he was talking about some physical person. And so God gave him a thorn in his side in order to keep him humble. God was more interested in developing Paul's character and actually trying to reach a larger audience through Paul. And if he didn't have the thorn in his side, he could have reached more people. But God was more interested in developing his character more than having a wider audience for Paul. So it was on purpose to keep him humble. And it worked, of course. It's really beside the point what he was actually talking about. It's not as important as the next verse, because this next verse can be applied to anything, to a lot of things, actually. So the next verse, God says to him, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in your weakness." So this is the meat and potatoes of the video, brothers and sisters. This is where I think I had a divine revelation 2-3 days ago, where something clicked in my mind a lot, like another dimension opened up in my mind. That's what divine revelation feels like a lot of the times. Like you can see the fourth dimension, for example, not with your physical eyes, but I'm talking mentally. And let me tell you first what I thought this verse meant in the context of, I'm talking in the context of an addiction or a repetitive cycle you might be in, or pornography addiction, for example, or you might have a weed addiction. So I'm talking in this context. I'm not necessarily saying Paul was talking about this. That's why I provided the context, these verses before this central verse I wanted to analyze. But I think this verse can be applied to, in that context of an addiction you might be afflicted with, brothers and sisters. So let me tell you first what I thought it meant. I thought this verse meant that basically do the best that you can in your own strength, and if you fall for sin, for example, and my grace is there for you, my grace is there available for you to uplift you. And this is a flat out wrong, I think, a wrong interpretation of this verse. What this verse really means is, my grace is sufficient for you, basically means rest in God's grace, you know. That's what it really means, rest in my grace. Use my grace. Let's say you had a pornography addiction, for example, or you have. God doesn't need to take your temptations away, nor does he need to increase your strength. All you need to do is rest in his grace, you know. You might have been praying over and over again for God to either take away the temptations or to increase your own strength to resist the sexual temptations. But God doesn't need to do these things. All you need to do is rest in his grace, you know. You've been praying over and over again for something substandard, which is for him to increase your own strength. Like, for example, let's say you're in a desert and there's this tall building that provides a shade, And instead of going in that shade, you pray for God over and over again to give you your own shade. I mean, why are you praying for something that's already available to you? Just go in that building's shade to protect yourself from the sun beating down on you. Well, why are you praying for something substandard? You know, you've been chasing your tail over and over again, praying for something substandard. I'm talking to myself, by the way. When I'm saying this, I'm not necessarily talking to you. I myself I've been doing this over and over again, chasing my own tail. You're not supposed to use your own strength, and you're not supposed to. God doesn't have to take away your temptations. All you need to do is rest in His grace and flee from sexual immorality. What does that mean? I've been wondering. I've been asking myself this question over and over again these past few months. I was asking myself questions like, how can you flee from something that's literally everywhere? You know, pornography is only 2-3 clicks away. You know, you can flee from a person physically. How do you flee from pornography? Fleeing from sexual immorality includes physical measures, of course. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm talking about the spiritual component of fleeing from sexual immorality. Fleeing from sexual immorality, it means rest in God's grace. That's what it means, basically. Rest in the shade that God has already provided. When you're resting in God's grace and dealing with temptations is easy, you know. Staving off temptations is like, it's as easy as breathing, you know. You'll be staving off temptations like nobody's business. So what does this actually mean, resting in God's grace? It means having a deep realization of how much mercy and grace God has over your life, how much He's forgiven you for what you've done so far. Once you have a deeper realization of this, His grace for you, His love for you, then it's going to hit you like a ton of bricks, and you're naturally going to want to stop sinning. You're naturally going to want to get out of that sin cycle. It's going to be as easy as breathing, like I said before. Brothers and sisters, that's what resting in God's grace means. Radical grace means, radical grace produces radical transformation, brothers and sisters. So that's what this verse means. My grace is sufficient for you. God's grace, the best use of God's grace is before you sin, you know. You use God's grace as a spiritual weapon to stave off temptations. Any temptation you might have a smoking addiction or a weed addiction, a pornography addiction, for example. So the best use of God's grace is before you sin, not after you sin. Of course, you can use it after you sin. That's not the best use of it. The best use of it is before, in order to stave off temptations like nobody's business, brothers and sisters. So you don't use your own strength. You don't pray for the temptations to go away. You just use God's grace. It's as simple as that, you know. So that's pretty much it. I hope this video, this idea was as much of a revelation as it was to me 2-3 days ago. Divine aha moment. I hope this video was a blessing to you. I hope you got something out of it. And if you already knew this, then please welcome me to the club. So I finally got it as well. Finally. So God will allow you to be stuck in a cycle until you realize this. And He'll give you hints along the way until you make the connection, brothers and sisters. But once you make the connection, it's like whole nother dimension opens up, my friends. So that's pretty much it. Smash those buttons like they owe you money. Shoot a topic suggestion my way, whatever topic you want me to discuss. If you want me to lift up a prayer for you, say so in the comments. And also lift up a prayer for me too. We should all be praying for each other. These dire times, brothers and sisters. So that's pretty much it, and I'll see you brothers and sisters in the next video. Bye-bye.